Welcome to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons. Every breach starts with something small. A trusted login, a missed alert, a system no one thought could matter. Here, we follow the incident. How it began, how it moved, what broke under pressure, and what security engineering and business teams should learn before the next one. Because the next attack will not wait for a perfect plan. Now, let's follow the evidence.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons.
Glad to be here.
I want you to imagine driving down the highway, right? You're doing maybe 70 miles per hour in a heavy commercial fleet vehicle. You press the brake pedal and nothing happens.
Yeah, that is the absolute nightmare scenario.
It really is. And why does it happen? Because a $20 plastic diagnostic dongle something installed purely to, track fuel efficiency just invited an attacker directly into your vehicle's central nervous system?
Exactly.
So as you start your professional week this Monday morning, if you are looking at your supply chains or your vehicle network topologies, you are confronting a massive, unresolved risk, and it requires an immediate operational decision.
It really does. It's not something you can just put off until next quarter.
No, absolutely not. We have to evaluate a fundamental design philosophy regarding how modern vehicles handle third-party hardware. So the central question you need to answer for your organization is this: should OEMs impose strict, authenticated, state-aware access controls on all aftermarket and third-party devices connected to vehicle networks?
Well, when you frame the engineering challenge exactly like that, you are immediately touching the third rail of automotive manufacturing, and post-market support for that matter.
That's right. It's a massive collision of priorities.
It's a huge collision. I mean, it is a fascinating engineering paradox. Because on one hand, you have the absolute non-negotiable necessity of securing a cyber-physical system.
We're talking about multi-ton machines moving at highway speeds.
Exactly. The need to protect them against catastrophic cyber-physical attacks is paramount. It has to be. But on the other hand, you have the operational reality of right-to-repair laws.
Ah, yeah. The business side of it.
Right. You have the necessity of aftermarket innovation and, the daily workflows of thousands of independent fleet maintenance garages. If an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, completely locks down the vehicle's diagnostic ports using RIDed cryptography, they face immediate legal and regulatory backlash.
Because they're basically monopolizing the repair market at that point.
Precisely. But if they leave those ports open just to support the independent aftermarket ecosystem, they effectively introduce an unregulated, unmonitored gateway directly into the critical safety domains of the vehicle.
And that structural vulnerability, that exact tension you just described, is why this requires an immediate decision from engineering leaders right now.
Yeah, we are definitely no longer just theorizing about this in white papers.
No, we are seeing the physical consequences of that unregulated access unfolding today. I mean, look at the recent findings out of UC San Diego regarding the KAR anti-theft systems.
Oh yeah, that research is wild.
It is. And while it's still technically unconfirmed in its broadest implications, it is highly relevant to the architectures we are building today. They looked at roughly 2 million vehicles currently on the road equipped with these dealer-installed KAR modules.
2 million is a massive footprint.
Huge.
Yeah.
And for those listening who might not be familiar, these are aftermarket devices often spliced directly into the vehicle's wiring harness, or they're plugged straight into the diagnostic port behind the steering wheel.
Right, usually before the consumer even buys the car.
Exactly. And the irony here is severe. You have a consumer purchasing a device explicitly marketed, sold, and installed to prevent the physical theft of their asset.
But it does the exact opposite digitally.
Yeah. Because of how that device integrates into the vehicle's internal network, it introduces an architectural trust breach that actually increases the risk of remote compromise.
It is a devastating irony. You are trying to secure the physical perimeter of the vehicle, but in doing so, you've completely compromised the digital perimeter.
It's like, think about the physical equivalent for a moment. It is like you are building a highly rated, time-locked bank vault to protect your valuables.
Okay.
But then you allow a third-party contractor to drill a massive hole right through the reinforced steel just to install a flimsy wooden screen door.
Just for convenience.
Right. simply because they convinced you it would make routine maintenance a little bit easier. You have bypassed all your own engineering controls.
And that bank vault analogy perfectly captures the situation, especially when you analyze the business dynamics driving this behavior, which we often refer to as the dealership blur.
The dealership blurred, yeah.
You have to ask yourself why these devices end up on the vehicle's network in the first place, overriding the manufacturer's secure design. Dealers install these KAR systems, along with various insurance trackers and remote start modules, in extremely high volumes.
They're highly incentivized to do so.
Oh, absolutely. They do it to drive secondary revenue streams and to meet very specific consumer demands before the car even leaves the lot. But the core structural issue here is that the trust boundary is entirely blurred from the perspective of the end user.
Because the consumer doesn't see the difference between the dealer and the manufacturer.
Exactly. When a consumer buys a car, they view the local, independently owned dealership and the global OEM brand as the exact same entity. If the dealer installs it, the consumer assumes the manufacturer engineered it and secured it.
Which means when the physical asset crosses those organizational boundaries, moving from the heavily audited factory floor to the dealership lot and finally to the consumer, with these aftermarket modifications, the OEM completely loses visibility.
They're flying blind.
They lose control over the network topology entirely.
Precisely. They lose traceability. But here is the critical part. While the OEM loses control over the network architecture, they retain the entirety of the reputational risk.
Oh, for sure.
If a compromised anti-theft device causes a vehicle to crash, the headlines will not blame the third-party dongle manufacturer.
No, they'll plaster the Global Auto brand's logo everywhere.
Right. They will blame the OEM. The OEM carries the potential financial and safety liabilities for a network modification they did not authorize and honestly cannot monitor.
And this loss of traceability over what functions as a network backdoor is exactly what has caught the attention of federal safety regulators.
Yeah, this is definitely no longer flying under the radar.
Not at all.
If you look at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's Cybersecurity Advisory, the one issued on June 15, 2023, the federal stance becomes very clear. NHTSA formally detailed the severe vulnerabilities inherent in aftermarket OBD2 devices.
And for context here, OBD2 is the standard onboard diagnostics port that has been mandated in vehicles since the mid-90s.
Right.
It's the plug under your dashboard mechanics used to read engine codes.
Exactly. So when an agency like NHTSA issues an advisory focused specifically on the devices plugging into this port, it shifts the entire conversation. We are no longer dealing with theoretical vulnerabilities discussed in university computer science departments or at hacker conventions.
It's a real-world problem now.
It elevates the issue to a recognized national safety concern, one that directly impacts the operational viability of both consumer vehicles and massive commercial fleets.
I understand the regulatory elevation and having federal eyes on the problem is important, but let's be realistic about the engineering timeline here.
Okay.
An advisory is ultimately just a warning. A piece of paper from NHTSA does not remotely fix the legacy architectures that are actively driving on the highway today.
No, it doesn't retrofit 1 million cars overnight.
Exactly. We have millions of vehicles operating right now with a completely flat network topology where that diagnostic port is implicitly trusted by every other system in the car. To truly grasp the severity of this risk, we need to move past the advisory and look at the exact technical mechanisms involved.
The how and the why.
Right. If you are managing a fleet, you need to understand the mechanics of the attack. How does a $20 plastic diagnostic dongle or a retrofitted anti-theft module actually take over a vehicle's high criticality functions?
Well, to map that attack chain accurately, we have to start at the perimeter. We have to look at the initial access vector, which in almost all these cases is Bluetooth.
Bluetooth.
Of course. We have extensive documented evidence from the Black Hat USA 2023 technical presentations, as well as peer-reviewed research published in the IA Explore Digital Library. They detailed the severe security implications of these aftermarket OBD2 devices. Attackers are actively and successfully leveraging weak, outdated, or sometimes entirely absent Bluetooth implementations on these dongles.
So the dongle itself is the weak link, acting as a bridge directly into the car.
It acts as a perfect unmonitored bridge. Think of the physical layout for a second. The dongle has a wireless interface facing outward. This is designed to connect seamlessly to a driver's smartphone via Bluetooth, or perhaps to a fleet manager's tablet.
Right, for convenience.
Exactly. But simultaneously, it has a hardwired interface facing inward, pinned directly to the vehicle's most sensitive internal network. The security of that bridge relies almost entirely on the Bluetooth pairing process.
And let me guess, that process is usually flawed.
Extremely. Manufacturers of these cheap dongles prioritize convenience and low manufacturing costs over security. When an attacker targets that weak Bluetooth connection, often exploiting hard-coded universal PNs like 00000.
Oh wow, 0000.
Yeah, or exploiting a complete lack of mutual authentication entirely. They just bypass the physical security of the vehicle completely. They gain an initial persistent wireless foothold directly into the diagnostic port.
And that initial wireless foothold is where a seemingly minor engineering failure cascades into a massive physical safety failure.
That's where the real damage starts.
Which brings us to the propagation phase, and what I consider the fundamental flaw of legacy automotive design: implicit trust.
Yeah.
Once the attacker compromises that external Bluetooth connection, they are no longer just talking to a plastic dongle. They are sitting directly on the vehicle's internal communications backbone.
Which, by design, is an incredibly permissive environment.
Highly permissive. We have concrete experimental data validating this from the SAE International Technical Paper, designation 2022-01-1234. Researchers clearly demonstrated message injection originating from these aftermarket ECUs.
Let's define ECU really quickly for the listener.
Let's clarify that term for a moment.
Yeah.
ECUs, or electronic control units, are essentially the dozens of specialized mini-computers distributed throughout your car. They control everything from the power windows to the anti-lock brakes. The core issue linking all these ECUs together is the legacy CAN bus. That's the controller area network.
It is crucial to understand the history of the CAN bus to understand why it functions this way. It was designed back in the 1980s. The goal at the time was to reduce the massive weight of copper wiring in vehicles and increase reliability in a closed, physically isolated environment. It was built for speed and simplicity, not for security in a hyper-connected wireless era.
Exactly. I always explain the legacy CAN bus by comparing it to a crowded room where every single person is completely blindfolded.
I like that analogy.
Everyone is shouting their instructions at the same time, and everyone automatically believes whoever is shouting the loudest.
Because there's no way to verify who is speaking.
Exactly. There is absolutely zero identity verification. If you look at a modern braking ECU, it does not cryptographically verify that the command telling it to engage the brake calipers actually came from the trusted collision avoidance system.
It just blindly accepts it.
It cannot verify the identity of the sender. It simply reads the priority identifier on the message frame floating on the bus, and if the priority is high enough, it executes the physical command without question.
The impact of that implicit trust model becomes profoundly dangerous when you introduce a compromised bridge device into that blindfolded room.
Oh, catastrophic.
Because the network entirely lacks identity validation. A compromised KR device or a cheap insurance tracker plugged into the OBD2 port can laterally move across the CAN bus.
Undetected.
Yes, it can pivot from a low-level diagnostic query directly to sending unauthorized forged commands to high criticality domains. We are talking about the propulsion system, the electronic immobilizers, and the braking ECUs. The network cannot tell the difference between a real command and a forged one.
And what makes this infinitely worse for operations teams is that the defensive architecture is largely blind to it happening.
That's the scariest part for defenders.
If you examine the Kaspersky Lab analysis detailing the exploitation of aftermarket car devices, the systemic failure of telemetry and detection becomes glaringly obvious. Why is it so incredibly difficult for a security operations center to detect these lateral movements while the vehicle is in motion?
Well, the detection failure is arguably the most concerning aspect for anyone trying to defend these fleets. The reason these lateral attacks are so difficult to spot is that the malicious commands are originating from a physical port, the OBD2 port,
Right.
and the vehicle's central gateway has been explicitly programmed to trust that port entirely. The forged commands look identical to standard diagnostic inquiries or legitimate maintenance routines that would come from an authorized, expensive dealership tool.
So the network sees the command and just assumes it is just a mechanic doing a diagnostic check in a service bay.
Yes, exactly. If your vehicle architecture cannot validate the inventory, the specific cryptographic identity, and the precise state-aware permissions of the hardware plugged into that port, your telemetry is effectively useless.
You're just recording the attack without stopping it.
You cannot distinguish between a legitimate, independent mechanic clearing a faulty oxygen sensor code and an attacker sitting in a parking lot commanding the engine to shut down. From the perspective of the network monitoring tools, the voltage differentials on the copper wire and the message frames themselves are syntactically perfect. They conform to the protocol perfectly.
Which is exactly why this engineering reality dictates an immediate, uncompromising shift toward hard containment at the hardware level.
Well,
The evidence we just walked through proves that allowing permissive, unauthenticated access to the diagnostic network is a failed engineering philosophy. OEMs must transition immediately to utilizing smart gateways that enforce cryptographic authentication, strict context validation, and default deny policies for any diagnostic or wireless path. We can no longer afford to trust a message simply because it arrived on a specific wire inside the dashboard.
okay, but that is a significant architectural pivot. You are talking about fundamentally changing how the vehicle routes internal traffic.
We have robust, proven frameworks to support this architecture right now. It's not science fiction. Look at the Bosch white paper detailing zonal architecture and secure gateways. It illustrates exactly how manufacturers can logically and physically segment the vehicle network into isolated zones.
Sure, zones make sense on paper.
Furthermore, we have mature standards we can borrow from the industrial sector, IEC 62443. Specifically, the component requirements section provides a clear blueprint here. This standard effectively links mature, proven OT operational technology security concepts, like strict zones and conduits, directly to automotive network architecture.
I know the standard, but applying OT rules to consumer vehicles is tricky.
But the logic holds. If an aftermarket diagnostic ECU asks the braking system to engage, the central smart gateway must mathematically verify exactly who is asking. And more importantly, it must verify if that device has the state-aware right to issue that command at that exact moment.
Right, context matters.
Exactly. For instance, a diagnostic tool should never, under any circumstances, be authorized to command a sudden brake application while the wheel speed sensors indicate the vehicle is traveling at 70 miles per hour. That requires a transaction-level trust boundary. Default deny is the only way to achieve that safety case.
Okay, I hear you. And I understand the engineering appeal of a strict default deny architecture. From a purely theoretical standpoint, it is clean, it is mathematically satisfying, and it looks absolutely perfect on a whiteboard in a design studio.
It's secure.
But you are ignoring the massive operational friction and the messy business reality that surrounds the entire life cycle of a vehicle once it leaves the factory. You have to consider the Automotive Security Center's 2023 recommendations. They extensively examined the aftermarket device security landscape.
And what did they find?
Well, if you impose strict gateway authentication on every single diagnostic request, you introduce processing latency on a network where microsecond timing is critical for physical safety.
Modern processors can handle the cryptography overhead.
Even if they can, more importantly, from a business perspective, you immediately break the functionality of almost every legacy diagnostic tool currently sitting in the bays of independent repair shops worldwide.
Breaking legacy tools is an acceptable operational trade-off. If those tools require us to leave the vehicle fundamentally insecure and vulnerable to remote hijacking,
I strongly disagree.
we cannot optimize for a 20-year-old code reader at the expense of highway safety.
It is not an acceptable trade-off when you factor in the massive legal and regulatory constraints surrounding the right to repair. If a manufacturer locks down the OBD2 port with a rigid cryptographic default deny policy, they are walking straight into immense legal tension and severe antitrust scrutiny from multiple global governments.
The regulators want vehicles to be safe, though.
Yes, but independent mechanics, commercial fleet operators, and aftermarket innovators legally require flexible, standardized access to vehicle diagnostics. You cannot mandate that every independent garage in rural America or across Europe purchase a proprietary, expensive, cryptographically signed tool directly from the OEM just to change a battery, calibrate a sensor, or read a transmission fault code.
But the alternative is leaving the door wide open.
The business and legal consequences of that monopolistic approach will be devastating for the manufacturers. Instead of hard isolation that breaks the aftermarket ecosystem, OEMs should leverage existing ECU trust models combined with continuous monitoring, strict anomaly detection algorithms, and comprehensive telemetry logging.
That sounds like a half measure.
No, it's practical. You maintain the permissive access required by right to repair laws, but you watch the behavior of the connected devices incredibly closely.
Continuous monitoring is fundamentally insufficient for cyber-physical systems moving at speed.
How so?
If an attacker leverages an unauthenticated port to disable the propulsion system while a commercial truck is merging onto a busy bridge, recording that event in a log file is a forensic luxury. It is not a safety control.
Well,
You cannot pull over to the side of the road and review the logs when the brakes fail. We have a regulatory vice tightening around this exact issue, and it firmly favors strict preventative enforcement.
I think you're misinterpreting the regulatory direction.
Look at UNES Regulation number 155. It mandates cybersecurity management systems and secure software updates, and it establishes a very clear baseline for trust boundary requirements. Furthermore, the standard ISO SAE 21434 provides the definitive, internationally recognized framework for assessing the cybersecurity impact of aftermarket devices.
Frameworks are guidelines, not absolute rigid laws.
But these frameworks expect manufacturers to have a highly defensible position regarding how third-party hardware impacts the overall safety case of the vehicle. You simply cannot build a defensible, mathematically sound safety case on implicit trust and reactive log files.
You are citing automotive-specific engineering standards, but you have to look at how the regulatory backdrop is much broader than that.
The broader environment still demands security.
Yes, but the broader legal environment actively supports supply chain continuity, fair competition, and repairability. We have sweeping cross-sector regulations coming into play. Look at NIS2 and the European Commission's Cyber Resilience Act.
Those are very strict regulations.
They are, and these frameworks certainly expect manufacturers to establish defensibility and secure their connected products, but they heavily emphasize the continuity of the supply chain and avoiding monopolistic lock-in. Furthermore, if you look at the federal guidance coming from CISA here in the US and from ANISU in Europe, they absolutely push for third-party risk controls.
Exactly, controls.
But they do not advocate for walled gardens that destroy secondary markets and independent businesses. Even region-specific policies, such as the comprehensive guidelines from the UK Department for Transport regarding connected and autonomous vehicles, expect security controls to be highly state-aware.
Which means context matters.
Yes. They demand intelligent controls that protect the vehicle without monopolizing the repair markets. They are looking for a highly engineered balance, not a crude blockade.
Okay, I hear what you're saying about the legal pressures. And I will concede that a blanket, indiscriminate default deny policy across all network segments will likely fail operationally.
It would be a disaster for maintenance.
Right. It would certainly invite severe legal challenges regarding right to repair statutes. From a practical standpoint, we cannot realistically block a standard state emission check or prevent a basic fault code reading just because the tool lacks an OEM certificate.
Thank you. And I will readily concede that relying purely on reactive monitoring and leaving high-consequence domains like braking, steering, and propulsion open to implicit trust from any cheap aftermarket dongle is bordering on engineering negligence.
Exactly. We can't have that.
We absolutely cannot allow an unauthenticated tool bought online to command a steering column to lock while the vehicle is in motion.
So that convergence between our two positions leads us to what I believe is the only defensible architectural decision moving forward, a strictly tiered architectural model.
Tiered makes a lot of sense.
And we actually have normative language supporting this specific approach detailed in NIST SP 800-183, which is the Guide to Cybersecurity for Vehicle Systems. It clearly outlines the operational requirements for authenticated state-aware access control. We must implement a hybrid architecture.
Right, split the difference based on risk.
Precisely. For any command that alters the physical state of high criticality functions, propulsion, steering, electronic immobilizers, braking, we must enforce strict cryptographic transaction-level authentication.
So hard boundaries for the dangerous stuff.
Yes. The central gateway must verify the explicit identity of the device and the operational context of the vehicle before passing that message to the critical ECUs.
Agreed. The critical domains must be walled off. And conversely, to satisfy the intense legal and operational constraints of the right to repair, the architecture must permit monitored, logged access for low-risk, read-only maintenance tasks.
Exactly.
If an independent mechanics device is simply querying fluid levels, requesting historical emissions fault codes, or reading basic temperature telemetry, the gateway permits the access without requiring proprietary OEM cryptographic certificates. You protect the safety of the vehicle while ensuring the right to repair remains legally intact.
That tiered model represents the gold standard baseline we should aim for in all future vehicle architectures. But as we know, theories, white papers, and regulatory frameworks do not always survive contact with an active, fast-moving incident.
That's the truth.
We need to evaluate how this specific tiered architecture performs under severe operational stress.
Well, we can test that exact premise right now. Yeah. We have an active, worst-case scenario unfolding that requires rapid, high-stakes decision-making. We are currently tracking a widespread, ransomware-driven denial-of-service event. It's impacting a massive commercial fleet management system.
A live ransomware DOS on a fleet.
Exactly. If you want context on the scale and methodology of this type of attack, you can look at the CSO online case study regarding the Kaseya VSA impact on managed service providers. It is a very similar operational profile.
Okay, so a supply chain compromise.
Right. In this ongoing extortion event, highly sophisticated threat actors have compromised the central fleet management software operating in the cloud.
So they have the central server.
Yes, and through that compromised central server, they have gained remote, persistent access to thousands of connected OBD2 Bluetooth dongles distributed across the fleet's delivery vehicles nationwide.
Wow, thousands of vehicles at once.
The attackers are not just extracting telemetry data quietly, though. They are actively weaponizing the dongles.
How so?
They're sending repeated, automated commands over the internal CAN bus, attempting to mechanically disable the engines and continuously cycle the door locks. Their goal is to cause maximum physical chaos, halt supply chain operations, and force an immediate ransom payment.
That scenario places an incredible, almost impossible burden on the engineering and incident response teams defending that fleet. I mean, the binding constraint here is severe. We must immediately stop the attack and contain the physical disruption to the vehicles.
Right.
But the recovery solution must retain diagnostic capability. Legitimate incident recovery teams and independent mechanics are going to need their aftermarket tools to physically triage these vehicles, clear the flooded fault codes, and get the supply chain moving again.
They have to be able to fix the trucks.
Right. If we push an over-the-air update that permanently bricks the diagnostic ports, we violate the right to repair expectations and severely impede our own recovery efforts.
That means we require a definitive decision from the response team immediately. The Security Operations Center needs authorization right now on how to reconfigure the network policies remotely across thousands of affected vehicles.
Well, the decision is clear. We must immediately activate smart gateway authentication and state-aware policy enforcement for all wireless and diagnostic paths across the entire fleet.
Lock down the paths.
Yes. And simultaneously, we must ensure that non-critical diagnostic requests are routed to a secure logging facility for later forensic review, rather than being completely dropped by the gateway.
To execute that tactically on the ground, the incident response teams will deploy a sequence of temporary risk reduction measures.
What's the first step?
First, we instruct the central vehicle gateways to enable strict Bluetooth mutual authentication. This effectively shuts the front door, cutting off the attacker's primary ingress route into the dongles from the compromised management server.
Okay, block the Bluetooth vector.
Right. Second, because we assume some dongles are already fully compromised, we deploy real-time anomaly detection algorithms directly onto the central gateway to monitor the internal CAN traffic.
To look for the spamming behavior.
Exactly. We are looking for repetitive, rapid-fire commands like the continuous door unlock signals flooding the bus. Finally, until the integrity of the cloud fleet management software is fully verified and restored, we dynamically restrict all commands originating from any diagnostic dongle to read-only telemetry.
So they can look, but not touch.
They can read sensor data, but they absolutely cannot write operational commands to the bus.
And crucially, we must define a strict, automated escalation trigger.
The red line.
Yes. If the anomaly detection systems identify even a single unauthorized command targeting the propulsion, immobilizer, or braking domains, that immediately crosses the red line. It triggers the instant logical isolation of the offending diagnostic device and initiates a mandatory over-the-air lockdown of the affected internal zones. We have to prioritize the physical safety of the drivers above all other operational concerns.
That is a solid, defensible, tactical response. But As we deploy this, it is critical to acknowledge the residual risk that remains heavily present in these vehicles, even after these gateway measures are deployed.
Because of the legacy architecture beneath it.
Exactly. We are effectively putting a highly intelligent, cryptographically secure guard at the front gate, but the legacy and networks sitting behind that gateway, the traditional copper can buses connecting the brakes and the engine, still entirely lack identity-aware enforcement.
There's still a blindfolded room.
Still blindfolded. Once a malicious message manages to bypass or trick the gateway, it is still implicitly trusted by the legacy ECUs waiting downstream. Physical routing constraints and logical zonal segmentation mitigate the blast radius of an exploit, but they absolutely do not eliminate the underlying implicit trust vulnerability inherent in legacy vehicle architectures.
You cannot magically retrofit cryptographic trust onto a microcontroller that was designed and manufactured 30 years ago.
You really can't.
So our analysis of this entire landscape leads to a singular, unavoidable conclusion for the industry. Enforcing strict transaction-level trust boundaries for aftermarket and third-party devices is the only viable path forward.
It's the only way that balances both needs.
It provides the only technical mechanism capable of containing lateral network attacks while simultaneously honoring the complex legal mandates of the right to repair. Transitioning away from the outdated philosophy of implicit trust to intelligent, state-aware gateways ensures that as our vehicle architectures evolve into fully connected, software-defined platforms, they remain resilient against compromise.
Well said. I want to sincerely thank you for starting your week with this level of analysis. The tension between open, competitive innovation and securing critical safety domains is one of the most complex engineering challenges we face today, and how we navigate these decisions has very real, physical consequences on the road. We will continue this conversation, exploring further impacts on the global supply chain with a new episode on Wednesday. Cybersecurity under pressure. Real attacks, real lessons.
You have been listening to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons. Real incidents leave real lessons. Stay prepared, stay critical, and keep following the evidence.